Okay, we are live on Facebook. Let me just go live on Instagram and we'll go ahead and get started. Okay, we are live in both places. Yay. All right. I am going to go ahead and get started. So, for those of you who are joining us, we are a little bit behind schedule, but that's okay because if you are not able to join us live, hopefully you are watching a replay. I am Makita Smith. I am the CEO and founder of Savvy Chicks in Real Estate, and you have the opportunity of joining me live today with my next new favorite guest that we have here. Some of you may recognize her face because she was a part of speakers that we had when we talked about dual citizenship in Ghana and what that pathway looks like. She'll talk about the embassy that she's currently partnering with, and we'll talk about that in a minute. But for those of you that are joining in with us live, make sure y'all share this broadcast, whether you are on Instagram, YouTube, or Facebook, so that your audience can chime in as well. And anyone that you know that is interested in relocating abroad, that could be afraid to relocate abroad, but we want to talk about, those fears and bring them to the forefront. Our special guest, Attorney Chanel, is going to talk to us about that and all things global. We'll dig right in. So, Chanel, we'll go ahead and get started right away. Y'all, if you want to follow her Instagram, which I love that you put that there, her Instagram is right up under her picture, so you'll be able to follow her on her Instagram page, where she is pretty active and also pretty active on Threads. Chanel, can you go ahead and introduce yourself to the people and tell us a little bit about yourself?
Okay, so hi, my name is Chanel. I am an attorney from Philly. I have been living abroad for almost 9 years now. I moved to France in 2016, and I've been basically, well, I've mainly been in France for the majority of my time abroad. However, for the last year, I've been splitting my time between Ghana and France. My relationship or connection with Ghana actually predates France. I first went to Ghana in 2013, and I've been going back and forth. But I've mainly, or I'm sorry, I've been based there permanently in the last year, or I've been splitting my time between the two countries more permanently within the last year.
Okay. I was just looking, making sure that we were good on both of the channels. That was one of the questions that I was going to ask you, like, which came first, Paris or was it Ghana? So we got the answer to that. My next question to you is that you are from Philly, so you are
Mhm.
from the United States. Y'all
Mhm.
recently won a Super Bowl, so I saw you cheering everybody on in your stories and on your Instagram page. What made you like leave the United States to go and live abroad in Paris?
So in my profession, and I mentioned I was an attorney, but I guess I didn't specify the type
Mhm.
of law I do, which is immigration law. So I practice immigration and business law. I help people move to France, and I help people move to the U.S. And Ghana as well. In my experience, I found that, well, both in my personal and professional experience, I found that people usually move abroad for either love, work, school, and then you have people who generally want like a life change. So I moved abroad for love. I was in a love category. So I moved to France to be with my now ex husband, who I had actually met in Paris when I was doing a study abroad. At first, we were friends, and then we did a long distance relationship for a few years, and then I ended up moving here for him.
Okay, and what made you stay?
Well, we have kids,
Okay.
so it's kind of hard to, just like leave with the kids. And then I also have business in Paris at this point. I've basically been here all of my 30s. My last almost decade of experience is in Paris. So I as much as I'm American and Ghanaian, I'm also French at this
Mhm.
point.
And you speak French?
I do. When I
Fluently?
didn't speak any, yes, and I didn't speak any when I moved here. I learned everything when I got here.
And did you, in order to learn the different language, did you go to school for it? Did you kind of like just pick it up naturally?
I did take classes. French is very, very hard, to be honest. Like,
Okay.
and even though I've been here for so long and I do speak French, I probably should speak better French for the amount of time that I've been here. But French is very hard, and I guess my accent is really strong.
Mhm.
Because to this day, I would be speaking, perfect or proper French, I should say, and the locals they'll hear my accent that I'm American. I don't have like the perfect French accent, but I did take classes. But I've also just learned, I would say, environmentally. And to be honest, I learned a lot of French since I had kids.
Okay.
Because is although I'm in France, obviously, and I speak French outside, in my job, I mainly speak English at work. So I'm an attorney, but I'm also a law professor at
Okay.
French law school, and I teach American law to the French students, and I actually teach American law in English. So technically, my course is a language course for them, but I don't teach English grammar per se. I teach English English law in English. So at work I speak in English, and then at home I was speaking to my husband in English. But when I had kids, and my oldest is 5 now, he's about to be
Mhm.
6. To be honest, I feel like I learned the most French since I had kids. Which, if you think about it, it kind of makes sense because kids growing up learning language or learning how to speak, they're learning it from like a basic level. And the thing is, I never had that experience. I kind of like jump right in to like professional French or like everyday French when I probably needed to learn it more so from the basics. So I learned a lot of French from my kids, or just listening to my husband speak to our kids in French because we raised them bilingual. Uh,
Okay.
everybody talks to them in French, and I talk to them in English. So that's how they've been able to learn both languages from birth. And so listening to him speak to them in French, I learned a lot of French.
Yeah. Okay. So I have a few questions from what you said. The
Mhm.
first one, do you feel like when you go and you tour in Paris that you should, as a tourist, know how to speak some French, or do they speak English a lot?
They definitely speak English,
Okay.
and it's France is like or Paris, I should say, is like the number one tourist destination in the world.
Mhm.
So they're used to tourists and people speaking English, but it is helpful to know basic words. So bonjour, mercy, au
Mercy
revoir.
is thank you, or hello.
Thank bonjour is hello, and merci beaucoup. Thank you very much.
Okay.
You want to order or you want something? Je prends or je voudrais, like I would like or I'll take. Like
Okay.
little basic stuff. But even if you're just saying like bonjour, that's very helpful.
Yeah.
Uh,
Kind
yeah.
of like how we say Aquapa in when we went to
Right.
Ghana, and I
Mhm.
learned Medici is in Madasi. Which one
Mhm.
is it? Which
Madasi,
one is
Madasi, Madasi.
Okay, so I
Mhm.
learned those two things. So I'm
Mhm.
still working on that. But I heard you also say something else when you were talking to us about like your experience with like the language. But you mentioned how you work as a law professor teaching French students
Mhm.
American law. Why do they want to know that?
Okay, so Americans, we're told, and we have this like philosophy of exceptionalism that like we're the best country in the world, we're the smartest, we're this and that, and then you go outside the world or you go outside of America, you're like, oh my gosh, we're so far behind. Even in terms of language, like I never took French in school growing up. I took Spanish, but and maybe I'm speaking from personal experience, but I feel like when we learn a foreign language in the States is more so on a very basic level, just to say like hi and bye, and that's
Mhm.
like all you really retain. Here, when they learn another language, they learn it like everything about it. So they will know grammar, and they will know specialized technical language as to that language. So my students, they're law students, and they're so smart that they learn American law in English. They also learn like German law in German, Spanish law in Spanish. Like that's how smart these people are. And if they were in medical school, it would be the same thing. They will learn medical English.
So are they learning the law as it relates to America because they just want the knowledge for themselves because they're not going to be practicing law here in America? So like what's the reason that they actually take these classes? Is it for their
Um,
own knowledge?
well, some of them will end up working in the States or working for
Okay.
international firms. Paris is definitely like a top five market with the international firms. So there are firms in America, really big firms based out of like New York, DC, LA, and they'll have an office here in Paris. It's
Okay.
those major international markets. So they'll learn it for that purpose, but
Okay.
also in terms of um, just business law. American law is very popular worldwide, and when you're doing international business, you have the opportunity to choose the law that will be applicable as to that transaction. Like even if you're in a different country, like you can put like a forum clause and say, all right, we're both foreign entities, or I'm a foreign entity, and if something happens with this, we're going to agree ahead of time that this issue is going to be resolved under this jurisdiction, under this law.
Yeah.
So on one hand, it's like they're generally smart. They just want general knowledge, but it can be helpful.
I love that because I never thought about it. But all the time that I talk about global business and people like um us living in a global world now, especially when it comes to real estate, but it's the same thing when it comes to business. I have a friend that's also a trademark attorney, and she
Mhm,
was just talking about partnering with other trademark attorneys that are outside the country. And
mhm,
just what you just explained is exactly the reason why she would want
mhm,
to partner with people outside of the country because recently I remember working with her, and I believe that the United States passed some type of law to where you had to use an American attorney to file a trademark with the USPTO office here
mhm,
in the
mhm.
States. And so they wanted to partner with her. So I guess like I completely understand that, and it makes sense, especially with it being a lot of companies that are now doing international business.
Mhm.
Oh, I love
Yeah,
that.
it's popular.
Okay, so my next question, I'm going off a little bit from like what I sent you that I would be asking because I'm just playing it,
Okay.
naturally. But a lot of times people are always asking, and we'll get to Ghana, but people are always asking like, what type of income? What does income look like? So income for you in Paris is completely different than the CDs that is in Ghana. When
Mhm.
it comes to Paris, what's popular for those who are looking to move abroad in like Paris, the location that you're currently at? Like what's popular when it comes to like getting a job? Typically we tell people don't look to go to Ghana to get a job to be able
Mhm.
to live the American lifestyle that you're used to, but would
Mhm.
you say the same thing about Paris? What's the difference?
So that's an excellent question. As to employment, the difference between like a Western country like France versus a Ghana is that yes, the infrastructure is different. It's more similar to America in that you do have big companies that are hiring, and there are jobs where you can go and work for a job. You're not necessarily restricted to being an entrepreneur like in Ghana, where the infrastructure isn't really set up like that for you to be able to go and apply to jobs. Most people are really going to be entrepreneurs. But while there are a lot of jobs here and big companies, in our system, or at least the economic system, is similar to the U.S. It's a socialist country, meaning that the government subsidizes a lot of the people's lifestyles. So when it comes to like healthcare, education, etc., it's subsidized by the government. So in other words, you don't really have to pay for it. So French students, so the school that I work for, my law school, I believe my students pay maybe like 200 euros a year, and that's for their registration fees, and that's it. That covers their book. That covers their books. That covers the classes. It covers everything. Yes. So you're not coming out of school with debt. Okay. The way that in America we're coming out of school with like six-figure debt, you're not going to have that here. Yes, they do have private universities that cost
Mhm.
thousands of euros, but the average French person is going to a public university and they're coming out of school debt free. And then for healthcare, that's also subsidized by the state. So you don't pay for healthcare. So in America, you make the money, but you have to spend it. Here, you're actually not going to make the money like that, but you don't necessarily need but so much because you're not really spending it like that. So the
Okay.
salaries here are low. They do have jobs, okay, but or jobs available, but the salaries are low. So, for example, a job that you would make maybe six figures for in the U.S.,
Mhm.
maybe just coming out of school or a couple years out of school because you went to a certain school, or it's a certain degree, like say cybersecurity or something like that. You may make like, no exaggeration, like 40,000 here, and whereas in America, you might make like 80 and up for that job, you're going to make like 40 here. But at the same time, the cost of living, you're not spending as much. And your lifestyle kind of balances out. So it really depends on what you're looking for. Some people, they like the American way of life because they're saying, I don't care if I have to spend it. I still want the money. Like, give me my six figures. I'll pay you what you want, but I still want my six figures. And then
Right.
you have some people who are like, well, you know what? I'm getting 40, 50,000, but I have 6 weeks of vacation. They actually let me take my vacation. My job pays for my lunch. They pay for my metro passes. I have free healthcare. I don't have to pay back student loans. So it just depends on what you're into. And then yes, again, yes, there are jobs, but as France, you're going to have to speak French. Most jobs do want you to be bilingual. That doesn't
Mhm.
necessarily mean that you have to be super fluent, but you may need to be able to be conversational at least. So you do have to know some French. There are some jobs that you might can get away with not speaking French, but to be honest, they really want you to speak French. And last but not least, it's very hard and rare for a French company to sponsor a foreigner. It can happen, but they have to prove to or provide paperwork saying that French people can't do that job. There's a reason why they need to hire a foreigner. So I
Mhm.
say, I like to say, you can get a job here. The infrastructure is set up is similar to America, where they do have the companies offering the jobs, whereas somewhere like Ghana, there's not really companies like that for you to apply to. Like your best route is entrepreneurship. But if you can speak French or if you can get a job to sponsor you, then it may be worth your while.
Girl, I'm just sitting here just like, oh, I have a lot of questions. Like, we would be on here for like 2 to 3 hours, but I have a lot of questions. I'm not going to, of course, keep you long, but
It's okay.
now that you have told me about like the education process, what
Mhm.
does free healthcare look like? Living in Paris, is it available to everyone that lives there? Do you have to be a citizen? Is residency good enough? Like, what does healthcare and having free access to healthcare looks like in Paris?
So I say free healthcare, but technically we pay for it with our taxes. That's
Yeah.
another thing about France. Again, it's a socialist country, and so the government subsidizes things, but how do they fund it? And that's going to be with our taxes. So we do pay a lot of taxes. So what free healthcare looks like, or the system is, they have tiers of medical professionals, and so the basic tier that I guess like the average public health provider, there's no like copay, or the copay would be something very small like 20 euros, and so you would go, you would pay it, but you'll be reimbursed. Anything that you pay, you'll be reimbursed. Rarely do you have to pay up front, and if you do, you'll be reimbursed. And we also have a mutual, which is a private healthcare provider. Like, if you have a good job, they might also provide that. So whatever the government doesn't cover, your mutual or your private insurance, pick it up. But it's very affordable, and in
Wow.
fact, the system is so accessible. So we have like an app. It's called Dr. Leap. Doctor, I don't know what that is
Okay.
an app for, but it's an app to get an appointment. So I can literally, wake up in the morning and with like a headache or something like that, go on the app, and I'll have an appointment by like 12 o'clock. And there's no such thing as like in a network provider, outside network. We don't have any of that. It's just open.
What about
Whatever doctor is available, that's who you go see.
urgent care, emergency services? Like when you, well, here in Chicago, if we were to go to like emergency services, especially depending on the time of the year in the
Mhm,
wintertime, we will sit there for hours. So what
mhm.
is it like there with healthcare, and you're going to an app, you're making an appointment, but then when you go in, are you sitting for hours to be seen? Like how does that work?
I mean, depending on the doctor, it might be a
Okay.
wait just like any other doctor in the States, but
Yeah.
some of them are really good with time. If you have a 10:15, then you have a 10:15, or maybe a 10:30 at the latest. And
Okay.
then yes, there are some doctors you had a 10:15, but they're seeing you at 11. But so the doctors, that's pretty good in terms of doctors that you might book on the app. Emergency services, our emergency rooms operate the same as in the US. So it depends on how serious your problem is. You could be waiting for hours. And we do actually have urgent care, but it's very rare because, again, you can just go to the doctor and you can go see
Right.
any specialist. Like I can say, oh, you know what? I'm in my 30s, but I have a history, or my family has a history of heart conditions. I want to see a cardiologist. And I can
Mhm.
literally just book a cardiologist. I don't need a referral or anything. I can go see
Wow.
any type of doctor, dentist, healthcare specialist. It doesn't matter. I can just book it myself.
So, when you move from the US to Paris
Mhm.
and having like the flip of like education and healthcare to be included, how did you feel about the change from the US to Paris? And like, did you feel the load like lifted? Did you feel lighter? Like, how did you feel moving from these two different cultural experiences?
Yes, the rat race doesn't necessarily exist here. I mean, yes, people are working, but France, and I guess Europe in general, has a much more laid back lifestyle. So, as I mentioned earlier, in comparison to the US, where the average worker has maybe like 2 weeks vacation, and that's something that you have to accrue over time. You might get like 5 hours each paycheck, and then, at some point you have 2 weeks. And then in the US, I always say, or when I worked there, this how it
Mhm.
was, but you might have time, and then you go to take it or you request it and they fight you for it. They like, no, you can't take the time that you
Yeah.
actually have, right? Here, the average worker has about like 5, maybe 6 weeks vacation. That's like the minimum. And you can always get more, but that's the minimum. And you take it. They will take their vacation, and your job doesn't fight you on it. It's very laid back. If you have a 9 to 5, come 5 o'clock, you're going home. You don't have to worry about like a bunch of emails. The culture is very relaxed. We take like hour lunch breaks. It's just very, very relaxed. So I did feel much more relaxed because I was practicing law in the States, and I was actually working for the government. I was in Pennsylvania. I was in the governor's office, a general counsel. So I was working on the governor's legal team for cases in which the governor was sued or like a state agency in Pennsylvania. It was very stressful, highly stressful.
Yeah.
So it was definitely a change of pace coming here. The biggest adjustment would be again the money because I for sure took a pay cut, but it didn't necessarily hurt me as much because I moved here with my then husband, and I
Mhm.
was technically like living with him. He was paying the bills. But if I was like a single woman on my own, taking care of myself, it would have hit differently. I would have, it would have been, it would have been tougher. It would have been tougher. To be honest with you, a lot of people that you see living here abroad, they're really kind of like struggling because they're doing stuff on their own. And again, the cost of living it's lower, but you're not going to really make a lot. And one thing people don't really consider is that although we live abroad, we're still American, and a lot of us still have like American bills. I know I do. I still have student loans. I have my American credit cards. I have my American bank account. I have my French bank account, Ghanaian bank account. So every month I'm like moving money around, paying
Okay.
for this bill in this country, that country. So money comes in and it goes out everywhere. So, you definitely don't make as much money as you would like to here, but it balances out. It balances out, and that's I have a peace of mind. I have a peace of mind, and especially me being a mother now. When I
Mhm.
first moved here, of course, I didn't have kids, but I've been a mother here for the last 5 years or so,
Okay.
and I've got to raise my kids in a way in which I know I wouldn't have been able to spend the time that I've spent with them if I was working in the U.S.
Okay. And how old are your children?
Uh, so their birthdays are both in April. They're about to be 6 and 3 right now. They're 2 and 5.
Did you plan that? Like, did you
No,
plan?
listen, they're almost the same day. April 6th, April 7th. Like
Oh my!
literally
What do you do for birthdays?
3 years and one day apart. Almost,
What do
almost.
you do for birthdays when they're so close
Uh,
and but they are,
Right. So they having one birthday right now. They don't care. They enjoying it. I'm sure at some point they're gonna fight over it. Well, my birthday
Oh,
technically,
okay.
girl, but right now they don't care. It's just
It's
we'll
just
say
a
happy birthday.
celebration.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay. Girl, I didn't learn so much myself just from hearing your story. So I'm just gonna kind of like do some rapid fires to get some like really quick answers, even though I know it's not, all quick because it's complicated sometimes. But can foreigners purchase real estate in Paris?
You can, but you have to bring your own funding. You're not going to get
Okay.
funding from French bank.
Okay. That I see that in other countries. Can foreigners open up bank accounts in Paris?
Uh, it's to be honest, it's hard. It's
Okay.
possible, but it's hard. But they do have some international banks that don't necessarily have a physical branch. They're like
Hmm.
online international banks that operate in France, and a lot of people kind of use those. One of the reasons why it's going to be hard to open up a bank account here, if you're not, first of all, a resident, you don't necessarily have to be a citizen, but if you're not a resident, but even when you are a resident, is that the French banks don't like dealing with Americans because the way the American law is, they
Hmm.
have to disclose your bank account information to the American banks. And so I hear that the
Yeah.
compliance is a headache. They don't like dealing with that.
Yeah. I think I don't know if this is the name of that requirement is like know your client or know your customer, where you have
Mhm.
to fill out financial information so that they can give where
Yeah.
the money is
Oh, I
coming from.
see. Yep. Mhm.
Yeah, yep.
Mhm.
Okay, so got real estate, open a bank account. What does it look like to become a citizen or to obtain residency in Paris?
Okay. So the typical residency requirements or routes are going to be familial. Okay, so you marry a French person, but you don't even necessarily have to marry a French person. You can be in a relationship with a French person and get sponsored, and actually, you can be in a relationship with a French resident who isn't French. So, for example, right now I'm single. I'm no longer married. I'm single, and I am a French resident. I am not a French citizen. And if I wanted to bring my American partner over here, I could sponsor them. So some type of familial connection, employment, okay. But again, keep in mind it's hard to get a French job to sponsor you. It's possible, but it's hard. You can get like an entrepreneurial visa. So you would come here with a business plan and be self-employed. um, that's possible. I would say it's hard in terms of the documentation that's required because you'll have to have like a whole business plan. You'll have to be able to show that you're going to be making a certain amount of money and that you already have a certain amount of money in your bank account. Another option, and one of the easiest options, is a school or a student visa. And I know some people are older and they'll say, I have no desire to go back to school. But if you want to come to France and you don't speak French, you could come here as a language student. Okay. So you can come get a student visa to learn French and then work your way from there. That would actually be a great segue into the country. And student visa has one of the or it's yeah is one of the least restrictive visas in terms of the requirements. And you can also get a tourist visa. Okay, so you're not working here. You can just get a tourist visa. Another thing people should know is, as an American, you can come here without a visa for up to 90 days. So you can be
Okay.
here for up to 90 days without a visa. And I always recommend to people who want to move abroad, especially to a certain location, that you spend an extensive amount of time there anyway prior to moving. So maybe you would want to come here for like 90 days and get a feel for it and decide if this is what you want to do. And then you can convert your visa from there.
Okay. I did right now the 90 days. You know that when you go and you stay for 90 days on the tourist visa, when you leave, is it a certain amount of time you have to stay away before you come back?
Yeah, you're supposed to stay away at least like 30 days.
Okay, okay. Because some people kind of like, want to stay longer than that so they can get a feel for the country
Mhm.
before moving, because sometimes 90 days is not enough as well. But, and it depends on how big the area is, because you like
Right.
Ghana, I have
Mhm.
only been to Cape Coast Castle, and I've been 3 times, and then also Accra and like the surrounding areas, but I have never been like completely around the country. So shifting from Paris, tell us how you fell in love with Ghana. I know you went to Ghana prior to going to Paris, but how did you fall in love like with Ghana?
Uh, Ghana, it feels like the real life Wakanda. Like you go there and you just feel the love, you feel the black pride. It just feels so good and it looks good to see us in power and positions of power. Coming from the states where we're minorities and we'll be like the first black this or the only black in a certain situation there when it comes to the big jobs or the powerful positions, everybody is black. And
Hmm.
it's a good feeling to be in that position. So I first went to Ghana in 2013. I was doing a study abroad and I went there alone. I was staying with a family hosted me, and I spent the summer there, and by the time I left, or the end of the summer, like I knew more people in Ghana than the family that I was staying in. Like I was taking them places, introducing them to people
Oh,
they
okay.
never did. I really took advantage of the opportunity, and me being a law student at the time, I was able to kind of get connected with the right people in terms of like politics or people who were in the legal industry, and I made a lot of good connections, and I just fell in love with it. And I had always intended to move to Ghana. But then I ended up meeting this guy from France and falling in love with him, and then moving to Paris. And then that didn't work out. So that's how I'm able to follow my true dream, which is Ghana, and pivot back there.
Well, I could tell you one thing, your face lit up. Your face lit up even more. You're talking
Really?
about Ghana over Paris. So like
Yeah.
your face just told the whole story. So now you're in Paris, but do you have plans to move to Ghana in the future? Would you have a young children? I understand you want to keep them in school and not really kind of like disrupt their environment, but do you have plans to move to Ghana?
So right now I split my time kind of much 50-50. So
Okay.
with me being a professor, I have to be in Paris during the school year, and technically that's from about April to September, or
Okay.
September to April, and then I'm off April to September. So whenever I'm not in school or whenever I don't have to teach, I'm in Paris. So my law job, I'm pretty much able to do that remotely anywhere.
Yeah.
But it's my teaching job that requires me to be physically here. I don't teach online classes, I teach in person classes. So right now, what is it? It's about mid-February. So I'm
Mhm.
just counting down the time. I just have to make it to April, and then I can go back to Ghana, and then I'll be
Okay.
there throughout the summer into the fall. And it actually works out
Okay.
because, again, I can't really necessarily just fully leave because I have small children and their dad is here, but it's working out in that we're all here for the school year, me and the kids, because they're going to school as well during the
Okay.
school year, and they get to be around their dad. And so when school is out, we can travel, or I can leave them here with their dad, and I can travel. And then my job is pretty much sweet in that I really only have to work half of the year, but I get paid all year.
Okay.
So that's why I want to keep this job. And for right now, I'll do both until I'm like really established in Ghana and I'm making enough money where I'm like, okay, I don't need my Paris job.
Okay. Okay. Y'all, I'm loving it. So y'all all know that I also myself love Ghana. So I light up when I talk about it as well. I had a somebody we had a investment call regarding Ghana real estate on yesterday, and Empress, one of the blogs, had posted about it. And
Mhm.
one lady commented on the page and she was like, I heard that that Africans don't even like black Americans over there. Can you speak to that? Because I'm like so tired of that argument.
Uh, that's not true. I mean, people say it the same thing the other way around. People say that
Yeah.
Americans don't like Africans, or
Mhm.
African Americans don't like Africans, and Africans don't like Americans, and all of this. I would say Ghana is one of the most welcoming countries I've ever been to, and they show so much love to Americans. I mean, just look at the citizenship program. The fact that they even
Yeah.
offer us citizenship to relocate or to move there.
Mhm.
That's from the government, and the government is going to really represent the culture of the country. So that trickles down to the people as well. They are welcome into Americans. I mean, does tribalism exist? Yes.
Mhm.
It exists amongst themselves also, to be honest. I mean, you have the different tribes, and you have people who rep their set. I'm Ashanti. I'm I'm something
Yeah.
else. But it's not to the point where someone would discriminate against you or treat you bad because you're American. That's not true. That's not true at all. They're
Yeah.
very
I did reply to the comment to let them know that that wasn't true from my experience. And I told them, being, a tourist in multiple countries, I only went to Kenya and Nigeria so far, the two other African countries, but just around the world, period. I told her, I said, Ghana has been the most welcoming country that myself and my husband has ever been to. From the time that we land and hit that airport and that welcome home, like Aquaba. um Even when I went last time, to where one of the real estate developers met me at the airport, I already had transportation, but he still wanted to come to the airport just to welcome us in, and then
Yeah.
get into the hotel and being surprised, and not just myself but my husband as well, with the kente cloth, and then also with flowers and a saxophone player. I'm like, what is going on here? But it
Yeah.
was just to say thank you. And I was telling my husband, I said, well, when he comes to America, what are we going to get him? Because everything was so thoughtful and just well planned out, even down to the gift, which was like a wooden, what do you call those things that you drink out of?
Uh, is
Canister.
it
It's
the
something
whole-
like canister, but it was a wooden canister with
uh,
our picture carved in the wood. And I was like, this is so thoughtful. Like,
right.
it was just very thoughtful. And so I told her the same thing. Um, it's not true. And I'm saying based on my experience. And a lot of times, Chanel, you will have people not visit the continent or not even go to Ghana because of the things that they have heard and have seen on social media. What would you say to those people that are fearful to go to Ghana?
I think that you should try it out for yourself. To be honest, look at America's reputation and how you feel about America, how people feel about America themselves or where they live versus maybe another place.
Mhm.
People say the same thing about America. They can say, like, I'm from Philly, which although we're called the city of brotherly love, if we look at the statistics or the homicide statistics, and you're in Chicago, you know where I'm going with this. I
Yeah.
mean, 80 people got shot over the weekend. That's my city. So
Mhm.
I can never tell somebody somewhere else isn't safe when I'm from Philly and that type of stuff happens. You have
Mhm.
to practice or exercise discernment anywhere you go. Okay.
Yeah.
Um, but I will say it's very safe, and especially for women and solo travelers. I mean, my first trip there was as a solo traveler, as a woman, and I was completely safe doing a lot of things by myself. And fast forward 10 years later, I feel the same way. I don't feel like it's less safe. If anything, I feel like it's more safe because now they have more of a spotlight on them because tourism has exploded and they
Yeah.
can't afford for anything to happen to us. I mean,
Yeah.
we're protected, and in a sense, we have American privilege in that they're going to make sure nothing happens to us because it would cause damage to the country. So I would say that is safe. You should give it a chance. In terms of them not liking us, that's not true.
Yeah.
That's not true either. I think
And,
people
and
should just
you
try.
have created a whole network of friends and business partners and associates and all of that just from you going back and forth to the country, because I've seen your circle just looking at your Instagram page, and you and them just celebrating together and just showing up at events when they are getting awards, and you just cheering them on, them
Mhm.
being supportive to you when you were getting your citizenship in Ghana.
Yeah, the love in Ghana, both locally and from whoever you meet there, whether they're American, other Americans, or local, I just can't really explain it. I've never been somewhere where everyone was just like so supportive. Like even here in France, where I've been longer, and I guess I should have a stronger network for how long I've been here. I do know like other Americans and other Black women here, and we do support each other. But in comparison to Ghana, the love is just different. Like the people I met, uh, getting my citizenship with, I feel like we're kind of like in like a sorority or something. Like it's like we pledge together. Like these
Yeah.
are gonna be lifelong friends. They can always call me. I can always call them. Is the love is just different. It just feels so pure. And I guess it kind of makes sense because when you make a conscious decision to move somewhere and to take citizenship, like
Mhm.
that's like a mission, and you're going into it with a certain mindset. It's not just like, oh, I'm hanging out. It's like we all move for the same reason, and first and foremost, the reason is going to be the love of Black people. So
Mhm.
why would you go to Ghana to hate on each other? I mean, you went to a Black country because you love Black people, right? I mean, that's what I would hope, and that's what it feels like. It feels like we all have the same interests.
Yeah, I love it. Okay, so now we're gonna segue to dual citizenship because people want to know about dual citizenship. If you have questions, because we do have people on Instagram, but if you have questions, Siobhan, Marilyn, make sure y'all ask questions as it relates to citizenship. If you want to know, I know Siobhan just bought a property there, so she wanted to hear this, and she was on the call with you. I think you commented on her post. She just bought
Oh, okay,
a
yeah,
property.
yeah, yeah. The other day,
She
yeah, I
just
told her
purchased a
that she said she
property
had
in
some questions.
Ghana, so she's excited about it. But
Mhm.
can you talk about your experience with dual citizenship? Like, how did you obtain dual citizenship? Like, what led there? She said yes, so you still there, girl. What led to it?
Okay, so there are essentially two pathways to citizenship in Ghana. The first being the traditional pathway, which is you're a resident for 5 years, and after 5 years, you're eligible to naturalize. And during those 5 years, you aren't necessarily required to do anything specific in terms of making investments, spending a certain amount of money, buying a house, building a house. Those aren't requirements. The main requirement would essentially be that you've been there for 5 years or a resident for 5 years. But of course, the more you invest in the country, that will signify or solidify, I should say, your connection to the country. And that's really what they're looking for. They want to know, why do you want to be a citizen? So if you can demonstrate, well, I've been here for 5 years, I want to make this my permanent home, as evidenced by the work I've been doing here. I have my property, or I'm investing, I'm contributing in this way. That should suffice. So that's the typical pathway to citizenship, irrespective of ethnicity. So, in fact, non Black Americans, or even non-Blacks, I should say, could become eligible for citizenship that way. And in January last month, when they had a second diaspora citizenship, which I'm going to talk about that in a moment, they had a second diasporan citizenship ceremony. At the same time, they were having another general citizenship ceremony, and there were like a lot of Lebanese people who were becoming dual citizens, and that kind of went viral. People were like, "Oh
Yeah,
my gosh, they're giving all these white people citizenship! Like, what's going on?" But they've been there for some time, and I would actually say even longer than 5 years. Like some of them, their families have actually been there for like decades, and they have businesses there in Ghana. So
hmm
that's how they were able to obtain citizenship. So the other citizenship pathway, and this is actually the one that I partook in, was the diasporan route, which is that they have this program in which they offer um, the descendants of slaves in the Americas citizenship in Ghana. So the most basic criteria is that you are a descendant of a slave living in the Americas. So that's going to be America, or North
yeah,
America, the Caribbeans as well, I should say, Jamaica.
mhm,
Um, who else? I believe is are Haitians eligible? I think Haitians and are also eligible as well, or people who are in the Caribbean. So as long as you can show you were a descendant of slaves, that's the basic criteria. And Secondly, again, they want you to be able to demonstrate a connection to Ghana in terms of why do you want to be Ghanaian. So you should be able to illustrate or demonstrate a connection that you already have. So perhaps is that you are there as a resident, and now you want to get your citizenship. You weren't necessarily required, or you aren't necessarily required to be there, or at least full time. But if you can show that you do spend a significant amount of time there throughout the year, and that's for work, business, or whatever affairs that you have there. So those are pretty much the two qualifiers or criteria: that you are a descendant of a slave, and
Mhm.
that and that you can't trace your or yeah, you can't necessarily trace your ancestry to Ghana, or I'm sorry, not to Ghana, to the continent. And I don't mean by DNA. I mean in terms of you shouldn't be able to say my grandmother or my great grandmother was Ghanaian or Nigerian, because if you can say that, if you have the documentation to prove that, then this program is not for you, because you should be able to obtain citizenship through your family. This is for
Mhm.
people who we know that we are African ethnically, but we can't prove it because of slavery. So that documentation has been lost. So this program is to offer us a home on a continent that we otherwise would not have, because we wouldn't be able to prove that we are in fact from there. So it doesn't require DNA. It doesn't require that you can show that your family is from there. It just really requires that you can show that you're a descendant of a slave. And then you have to show your connection to Ghana. Why do you want to live there? And some people, you it might be that you're Pan African. I'm Pan African. I love Black people. I love the continent. I want to move to Ghana because of that reason. Or maybe you have a specific project in mind that you want to work on. Maybe you've already started it in Ghana, or maybe you plan to start it. So, depending on your expertise, they're looking for people. If you're in the healthcare industry, maybe you want to go there and be a nurse, or if you're a teacher, maybe you want to go there and be a teacher. If you're an engineer, you can go and be an engineer. So you have to demonstrate why do you want to move there and really show what you can contribute to the country. But I just want to say that there's no financial requirement per se,
Yeah, I
but
saw that.
if you do invest, that could help, or it could be a way to demonstrate your connection to Ghana.
Okay, Siobhan, you said when is program? Can you let me
I
know what you mean by that?
I think that she's probably asking, well, when is the program? Well, when is the next program, or when are they going to have the next citizenship in the program? That's probably the question, and that's actually a good question. So this program, it was initiated under the last president, and we actually just got a new president last month, and we believe that the program will continue under this new administration, but we have to give him time. He just came into office last month, and even with the last president, uh, this particular program, or the citizenship ceremonies under this program, only occurred maybe every 2 to 3 years. And so, being
Okay.
as though the last one just occurred last year, and what is it, 2025 now, to be
Yeah.
honest, I wouldn't expect another citizenship program this year. Maybe next year, that's possible, but I wouldn't expect one this year. So you'll hear a lot of people online, talking about the citizenship. But to be honest, if anyone tells you that they can for sure get you citizenship right now, they're lying, because that's not true. My advice to people would be to first start with residency. And so you're starting a pathway to citizenship, even if it's the worst case scenario, which is that you'll have to be a resident for 5 years and then be able to naturalize. If not, and if they, open up the program again, say in the next year or so, you'll already have your residency, and you'll be able to use that to show, like, this is my connection. I'm already here, or I already have residency. And another one last thing I'll point out about residency is that technically, once you get the legal status, that is, you're not necessarily required to be there physically. So me, I go back and forth. I'm there, 6 months out of the year. I'm not necessarily a full-time resident. So you can be a resident and split your time between Ghana and the States. But as long as you maintain that legal status as a resident, that's going to be good enough.
Okay, so you are correct. She wanted to know when is the next program. So you have the answers to that, Siobhan. And then she asked, I reached out to the principal in Ghana International School to see if I can work there. Okay.
Oh,
Well, let me know what happens with that. My question to you, Chanel, is that when going back to when you say like the proof of that you descended from slaves, because this
mhm,
is where a lot of people get confused on
mhm,
social media. They say, "Oh, well, my DNA shows that I'm like 2% this, 8% that, 20% that." So how do you prove that you were a descendant from slaves? That will be
mhm.
okay with Ghana as a proof of requirement.
So that's a good question. So to be honest, it's pretty much a an assumed fact if you are a Black American. And I hate to use this divisive language. There's
Okay.
this fight in America about like foundational Black American versus like foreign Blacks. But
Okay.
if you are a Black American who your family has been there for generations, so you're not like a second generation Black American. Again, you shouldn't be able to say that you have an African grandparent, okay, from a specific country. You should be able to look at your lineage and say, my grandma, my great grandma, my great great great, we were all in America. So that's probably going to be able to suffice. But
Okay.
you don't have to necessarily provide paperwork going back that far. So you have to provide your birth certificate and the information of your parents. And so my last name is Andrews, which is a very it's an English last name, right? Okay. So they're going to look at your name, they're going to look at your parents' name. And in fact, when I started this process, or when I started the citizenship process, I started it with some Nigerian British people who are technically British by nationality, but Nigerian ethnically, right? But they wanted Ghanaian citizenship, not Nigerian citizenship. And so once they started and the Ghanaian government saw their Nigerian names, it was over. They just knew it, like you're Nigerian, you have a Nigerian name. Or if they look
Okay.
at your birth certificate and they see that your parents have like an African name, they're going to say no.
Okay. Oh,
Yeah,
that's a very
that's
good
the way
point.
to do it. So you don't have to show like your great great grandparents information, but they're going to look at your birth certificate and your parents' birth names, and that's how they're going to be able to tell.
Okay. Now tell the people about the organization in which you work for, which I believe is a DAF, which is
Mhm.
the Diaspora African Forum.
Diaspora African Forum.
Okay.
Okay. So this is a embassy founded with under the African Union. So the African Union is the international union of African nations. They all belong to the African Union,
Okay.
and it was founded specifically for the purpose of uniting us in a diaspora. So right now in 2025, the African diaspora is trending. It's known about. It's popular. But the African Union, they were trying to get us together for decades. So DAF has been in existence for over 20 years. So they've been trying to establish this connection amongst us for decades. And so you have the four regions of Africa on the continent, and then you have the fifth and sixth regions. So the fifth regions are going to be Africans who have left the continent and who are in the diaspora, but they are African by nationality. And then you have us, people like me and you, who are part of the sixth region, meaning that by nationality we are not African, but ethnically we are African. And
Mhm.
so DAF exists to connect the fifth and sixth region back to the continent. So just like me and you, we want to, go back, we want to move to Africa, we want to work to Africa. You have people, or, people from the fifth region who technically are African by nationality, but they also have dual citizenships the other way. We're American trying to get dual citizenship in Africa. They're African and they've obtained dual citizenship in the UK or America, but now
Mhm.
they want to go back home. And
Yeah.
so a conversation begins and exists around, well, what is our life going to look like back on the continent? What are the opportunities? Uh, who's going to help us and how can we help each other? And so DAF exists to facilitate that conversation and opportunities. It's pretty much a landing spot in Ghana. So when you come to Ghana, come see us, tell us what you have going on, and we'll see how we can help you in Ghana, but also on the continent in general, because we have connections all over Africa. So we really just exist to facilitate the conversation. Uh, is it? I heard like an echo. We exist to facilitate the conversation within the diaspora, as well as share opportunities. And
Okay, I
we
don't know what that was. I was
okay, yeah, it kind of popped up, but it's not from me. I don't know what that is.
yeah, I hear another voice. I
No, that
hear
was
another
actually
voice.
it was my voice, but it was like a delay or something. I don't know.
Okay. I was trying to go to the website, but then you
Okay.
started hearing an echo. I was trying to grab the website for DAF so I can drop it in the comments, but I will share it afterwards. But will you be in Ghana around April 10th, 11th, 12th, 13th?
I'm gonna be there in April, but I'm not sure when. I know I'm gonna be there at
Yeah,
the end of
okay.
April for sure. I'm probably gonna go between the middle of April. I'm not sure what's happening around that time.
So I'll be there. But I'll meet with
Citizenship, right?
yeah, I'll meet with Ambassador Bennett. I'll get with her because she did send me a
Yeah,
message on WhatsApp. So I'll get with her to see if I can meet up with her because I want to see how we can work together in collaboration because we have so many people that now wants to relocate. They're looking at the citizenship opportunity. We have people that I just talked to somebody and met with her and her mom. She's 33, but her and her mom, they both want to leave the States. And I was like, wow. And I'm getting more and more of that. And so it's like I
right.
need that partnership and that collaboration so that we
Yeah,
can help.
they should stop by for sure.
Okay. Okay. So any last words for our people? How can they find you? If there's a way for people to work with you, even on like the immigration side or any business that you may have, like let people know how they can work with you and stay in contact.
Okay, so my IG is listed right here is Nelly NELLY.ESQ, and in my bio I have my link tree which has all of my different sites, my immigration firm site, my Ghanaian consultation site is on there as well. So that would be the
Okay.
best way to reach me.
Siobhan said this was great. Thank you so much. So she's on her way. I'm sure she'll reach out. But I just want to say thank you so much, Attorney Chanel. I know it's Friday night where
Okay.
you are. So what time is it in Paris? Because you're not in Ghana.
It's 8:55. So
Oh, okay. Okay.
I'm 7 hours ahead of you. What time is it
Yeah.
there?
Yep. It's 1:55.
Mm-hmm.
It's about
Mm-hmm.
2 o'clock. So 6 hours.
Okay.
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 Okay, well, that is it for me. I will be in touch with you. Hopefully, I get a chance to see you in April, but if not, I will
Me too.
see you in June.
Okay, I'll be there in June for sure.
Okay. All right. Thank you so much.
Yeah, sure.
All right. Bye.